just got done with a coaching session, and it's a good reminder for me that, you know, the people that you may give stuff away for free may never appreciate it. And you may notice this on social media. If you're engaging in stupidity, people will support you 100%. But at the moment you start to try to better yourself, all of a sudden you don't have any friends, right? And it's been something that's been really interesting to me, and I'm really trying not to speak from an ego position, but it's the things that I get paid to do. When I offer it for free to people, they don't respect it. But when people pay for it, they have a lot more respect. So it almost gives you the sense that the best way to share information is to allow people to come to you. So there will never be a point, unless I'm selling like a physical product, where I would ever ask someone to pay for my time, because I feel like self development should be for free. You shouldn't charge people for sharing information, because when you share, you learn about yourself and you teach others, and that should be the whole purpose of development, is to share with others. And the past few months I've been really struggling with how do I capture people's attention? And honestly, I've reached a point where I just don't care anymore. The people who really want the information, they will go look for it. And my entire journey of self discovery, meditation, all those things stem from the idea of the human is the most interesting machine. And my goal was to really dig deep within my own self to understand who I am, and then come back and sort of decode it for others. And speaking of script, because at some point in time, I kind of lost that path where I started to share the experience versus sharing the actual tools, right? And and it can be a bit of a dangerous thing for people. I appreciate the level of vulnerability that I've been able to express, um, just showing pure me. And it's not for the purpose of gaining likes or becoming famous or none of that dumb shit. It's, I want people to know it's okay to be your fucking self, you know? But anyway, through meditation, I came up with this theory of perspective locking and single point focus, which essentially ties to how people form their identities. And I have this entire lesson that's multiple pages long. I mean, it goes into the weeds, and it is the most profound theory that I've written for myself in terms of how do you drive success. And I'm sitting in this high potential program, and I'm thinking to myself, I have this meeting with this person, and he wants to learn how to become a better listener. In return, he wants to teach me how to influence people. And that is the reason why I'm making this video. And his one of the pieces of advice that he gave me was just do it. Just fucking do it. The people who are meant to listen will listen, and the people who lack the attention span, not to blame people or make it seem like I'm better than anyone, but some people just don't know how to pay attention. So he wants to show me how to influence people, and I will show him how to become a better listener. So through that theory, which can be applied to many other things, that's exactly what I did. So I will sit here in the next 10 minutes or so, and I will try to walk you through how I created this lesson of perspective locking and single point focus for him, to sort of teach him the value behind paying attention when you're in a conversation with someone. So the coaching session starts with how to stop predicting words and become a better listener. And the hook and why this matters at all is when you predict someone's words, you stop listening immediately. And it's obvious to them. And you can play pretend that you can hide it, but most people, especially if they're self-aware, they will know that you're bullshitting, right? Like you're somewhere else and you don't care about what they're saying. When you stop listening, you lose information, trust, and influence on that person. So you think attention should be viewed as respect, right? So, and for someone in a leadership position like myself, the titles that we own, I'm a senior director of whatever. Um, Leaders don't listen for the purpose to respond or fix a problem. The purpose of you listening should be to fully understand the current perspective or perspectives of the person that's sitting in front of you. That way you can make a good decision. When you start to try to guess where they're going, you're essentially driving the conversation and shutting them down. So that's where the theory of perspective locking comes from. So simply to define it is it's lock into their perspective for the duration of the conversation. Almost try to attempt to be them so you can understand what they're trying to say to you. So, um, and the benefit of it is if you're locked into their point of view, it becomes almost impossible for you to start, doing that mind junk that we do. Well, they're gonna say this, they're gonna say that, and you'll start to find in a surprising way that they may offer you more of themselves if you allow the space for them to be who they are, right? So the second piece of it is that single point focus. Think of perspective locking as this is the things that I believe about myself. And you can tie it to identity to say your identity is the set of perspectives that you decide or somebody else has decided for you. It's the collection of all of them. But the single point focus, it's locking into a perspective within that moment. If I'm having a conversation with you, I can literally lock into this circle that's around your face and I will not break attention. It makes some people uncomfortable, so sometimes you have to look away for their own comfort. But when you know yourself, I can look you dead in the eyes and be completely comfortable. But for your purpose, I will look away. So that's the focus. If you focus your attention dead center on the person, it locks your attention on them, and the noise that's in your head becomes more difficult to be rendered, right? Um, so think of single point focus as simply focus on one thing at a time and not what comes next. During the conversation, focus exactly on the words they're trying to say to you, but also try to feel what they're saying to you. And and that will make sense a little bit later. So, so you can practice this right now. As I'm talking, just try to zoom into the center of my face and see what happens to your attention. Your brain will naturally zoom in. And then the longer that you do it, the more the noise starts to be blocked out and you start to not predict the next words. But if you do start to predict words, just return back to the spot, right? And when you know that this is the thing that you should be doing is to pay attention to the person that's talking to you. If you decide that you're not going to look at this space, then you not being a good listener is not something that is passive or subconscious. You're making a conscious decision not to pay attention to that person. And isn't that rude? It's a very rude thing to do to someone. So even when they are done, and this is the space that is really important, is take a pause, real time. Take a deep breath when they're done talking. And sometimes if you take that breath, they will be like, okay, so he's allowing me the space to really talk. Maybe he really cares about what I'm saying. Just take that breath, especially as a leader, to give the person the opportunity to give you more of their perspective. Okay? Okay? And 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 as you're doing that, try not to track their words so much anymore. Start to feel what they're trying to tell you. Because sometimes people will say words, but what they really mean is in the expression. So if you're over here thinking, there's no way you can pay attention to expressions in the flow of how someone is telling you something can tell you the level of importance and meaning behind what they're saying to you. So don't track the words so much. Try to feel and not rationalize as much. Okay? So in short summary, the reason why people lose attention mid conversation is not because your brain starts to predict things instead of listening. You just don't really care about what they're saying, right? That's the thing that you need to really wrestle with. You don't care. Because if you cared, anyone that says they have ADD, when you care about something, your focus is right there. So shift your perspective from thinking about I'm just listening to someone versus equating your attention to someone's words, speech, conversation as you showing respect, because conscious attention is the highest form of respect you can give anyone. Okay? So that is the point behind perspective locking. Again, I don't want to make this a whole lecture, but I kind of just want to give like a quick little takeaway. So again, the single point focus is to stare at the person's sort of like the center of their face and just really lock in. And the longer you do it, the more your eyes will focus like a camera, and then your brain will follow that. Take the space to just pause and allow them that extra moment to really let you feel who they are and open up their perspective to you, right? Because if you don't allow that space, they will tell you what they think you want to hear and not really share their perspective. And for a leader, that can be really dangerous. So really lock into their perspective and let go of your own, right? And then track what matters. You know, in my young age, I thought everything was about logic. You know, you couldn't tell me shit. If I believe it, that's what it was. But something that I did learn through this journey is logic really doesn't matter. It's how you make people feel at the end that really does matter. So really feel what someone is trying to say to you. They're not talking without purpose, and even if they are, be kind enough to show them attention. So essentially, the way I ended the conversation or the coaching session with him was I'll give him a little short little thing to sort of take away. He's made some comments throughout that I also addressed, but just if there is a perspective about yourself or someone else that you don't admire, the very first thing to do is to remove that perspective as something that you own, because it is not yours. A lot of times your perspectives come from your family, from friends, from the environments you grew up in, you know? They're not yours. So try to ask why, going backwards, to sort of decode why you believe the things that you believe. You're not a Democrat or Republican because you are. It might have been because your family is. So when you ask why backwards, all the way till you get to the point where you think this is your decision, ask another why, and you may really find out the essence of why you believe what you believe. And if at the end it is not your own, just fucking throw it away and make up your own perspective. But if you do believe it after you ask all of the whys you can possibly think of, then really dig in and believe in that perspective. But never, ever be married to it, because then it becomes ego armor to say, well, I'm right, this person's wrong. No, that's just ego. So remove that mindset or that perspective and replace it with, for the people with the attention problems, to say, my ability to predict where conversations are going, where things are going to end, is a gift, right? The ability to pay attention to multiple things and focus in and come out is a gift. But understand, listening is a sign of respect. And it's not just respect for the person that's talking to you. Conscious listening is respect for yourself. And if you truly don't want to speak to that person, remove yourself from that scenario. But don't speak to anyone and be talking to yourself in your head. That is so disrespectful. So, again, the prediction is a strength. Listening is a fucking choice. Use the prediction skill after you heard their full perspective. That's when it's useful. And then for the purpose of him, he was speaking about, when I turn the lens and I'm teaching other people, it's very easy for me to say, this is how you listen. But he's like, I have a hard time being kind to myself in that way. And I told him, I said, you know what? The last point I was going to make, I'm not going to say it now, but I'm going to send you the document I created specifically for him. And at the end, I will write you a little note. And I will leave you with the note that I wrote him. And if you've ever watched any of my videos, I say this a lot, and it's so meaningful to me, is to be kind to yourself first, and then be kind to others. And being kind to yourself means you need to learn who you are so you can project a better version of yourself out in the world, and then watch what happens around you. Okay? If you watched this far, thank you. And I'm going to do something that's really uncomfortable for me and say, let's have an open discussion, whatever it is. Comment, follow, whatever you want. And if you didn't care, then don't care. It doesn't matter. Thank you.